All right, well, I got some feedback that the audio on the original AOE targeted effectability was bad, and I went back and looked at it, and it absolutely was horrific. So I'm going to attempt to recreate the content around the supplemental material for creating the targeted area of effectability. So this particular ability allows the user to target an area on the ground. When you confirm input, a meteor is supposed to strike from above, dealing massive damage to enemies, but ignoring friendly players in that space. So first, let's look at how the ability operates. So we're going to go ahead and just hit play. And I've set it up so there's a lot of spawn points, so hopefully I get enough people in the proper zone. Go to abilities. I'll take the meteor, drop it in my first quick slot. So it's under T. In that case, this group of actors that has spawned has 3 friendly, as denoted by the over the head indicator on those 3, and then 3 enemies. So if I back up a little bit, press T, I'm going to get a on the ground decal that I can move around with my mouse. If I place it strategically over all 6, when I confirm input, the effect will trigger. The actors within the area effect will either receive a decimating attack or nothing. So let's do that. And all the enemy actors were instantly killed, and the friendly actors were left unharmed. So a couple of things to do that and slow it down. So the decal tells me approximately where things are. When I fire the ability, you'll see a small line trace in the middle. Before that, you'll see a sphere debug circle around the group. So the sphere represents the area that will be affected. The line trace shows the center of that point. So it'll be sphere first, line trace second. Sphere, and then the line trace in the middle showing you the point. So let's break that down a little bit. For most of the abilities, I have them under the game ability folder. I have each ability in its own subfolder. This particular ability is the meteor, and there are 5 general classes involved in this ability. When I press the key associated with the ability, the input is sent to this gameplay ability meteor, which is arguably the top of the execution chain. There is a cooldown, which determines how long it takes before the ability can be fired again. There is a material instance for the targeting decal, and a cooldown widget that is on screen and then counts down. So, and then finally the targeting actor, which takes the material and places it on the ground. So if I open the hero meteor ability, we can take a look at it. So the event graph has nothing in it, because this ability is a child of our target-based AOE. So 90% of the code is consistent when you're using a target-based AOE. So rather than having that code repeat over multiple actors, it's better to have a base class where you put 90% of the logic and then you make a child of it that has the details. So if I look at our class defaults, in this child, I can define things like what camera mode do I want to have the ability to trigger, what's the radius that is impacted by the effect, what class do I want to use for the targeting class, which is this this targeting class right here. So I can define different targeting classes. What montage do I want to play? So in this case, the montage is this AOE ability. So when I play that, it's going to basically do this over-the-top animation, simulating me pulling a meteor down from the sky. There is a animation speed, which allows me to control how fast the animation applied. There's a delay between the animation and the visual effects, and then there's a delay between the visual effects and the actual damage done to actors. Depending on who's in the radius, which was this 245 units from the center, we can apply a gameplay effect to either enemies, in this case damage, friendlies, which you might heal, in this case nothing, or yourself if you happen to be in the radius, in this case nothing. Debugging is just what shows those images that we just talked about, the sphere and the line trace. And then what cooldown widget is associated with this and what tag is it expecting. So all of these are defined in the hero target base AOE. The other thing we've done is we've set up a number of overrideable functions that you can use. So 4 of them I've already done, but there are a few others that you can do here. Target cancel gets called if you trigger the effect and then decide, no, I don't want to pull the trigger. When you cancel, this routine is called. Here you could do whatever reset logic you might think. There's pre-targeting, which says, hey, before I ever even show the target, here's a few things you need to do. Target visuals allows you to add particle effects or anything unique to this particular ability. And then obviously targeting complete effect is any things I want to do on the actual completion of the event. So it's probably easier to explain those from the parent class than it is from the child class, because I think in this child, I don't think I did anything. Yeah, I actually did not do anything unique in any 4 of those categories. So let's go to the actual parent class. In the event graph of the parent class, there's a few things that are happening. This block at the top is really just enabling the widget to show up on the HUD. And that is pretty standard code. And then upon removing this ability, we take it off of the HUD. So that's pretty standard. On end ability, we're going to clear the camera mode, which will reset back to the default camera mode. So maybe I should show that before we talk about camera mode. So if I play, let me go grab the ability. So when I trigger the ability, the camera is going to move back to give me a broader view of the area that I'm targeting. So when I press T, camera will move back, letting you see more of the field. And then if I were to end the ability, either via cancel or via execution, the camera is going to move back in. It's going to basically return back to a normal camera view. So upon activation, camera rolls back. Upon execution, camera moves back in. So when the ability ends, we clear the camera mode, we move back in. So having said that, when we activate the ability, if we're locally controlled, we'll keep going. Otherwise, we'll abort. We'll set the camera mode to whatever camera mode we've set over here. We allow the pre-targeting activities to occur. So this function really just allows children to override and perform any other activities they want. If we're debugging, we'll send a message to the screen. Otherwise, we'll just go on to the wait target data. And the wait target data node basically says, I'm going to wait until the user confirms that they want to do something. So I'll send the ground target class in. Which class do we want to execute on the ground? I'll start a target location and whether or not we're debugging. And then basically as I'm moving the mouse around the level, we're still waiting on this node until I confirm action. When I confirm action or cancel being the abort, if I cancel, I simply just execute target canceled for anything that the child wants to do. If I'm debugging, I'll cancel it. Otherwise, I simply cancel the ability. On the other path, if I confirm the action, in other words, I say, yes, I want to trigger the effect, we immediately commit the ability. Make sure that's true, otherwise we cancel out. We start the montage playing. And that's a very simple macro which says, look, if the montage is valid, go ahead and play it. And then immediately move on. So it's not waiting for the montage, it's simply moving on. When that montage plays, we then wait for it to perform any activity such as a wind up before any visual effects should appear. This might be the character moving their arm backwards, and then as they reach the furthest point backwards, you might start your visual effects before the character starts to move the arm forward. So we time that and say, okay, that's how long we want to wait on the backswing. Then we allow any children to do any visual effects. So we say, okay, after X sub-seconds, in our case, I think it's 0.4 seconds, we trigger this child class. We let them do their thing. Then we wait a little bit longer. When that finishes, we perform our completing effects. These would be things like if I wanted to apply different effects to different characters. By default, we're going to do these things. So by default, we're going to say, go ahead and grab whatever the target data said. Determine if we hit anybody at all. If we did hit anybody, if anyone was in the sphere of the effect, then we do a complete sphere overlap of the radius to make sure we're grabbing all actors. We're determining what team the actor might be on. And this, again, is basically sorting this out actors, which is, in our example, all 6 that were in the sphere area. And we simply say, all right, first we grab what our team is. So the player who executed the ability, we need to know what team they're on. So that's the first thing we need to do. Then based on that, we clear out all of the arrays and say, all right, for everyone who was in the circle, if if first of all, if it was me, then we're going to say, okay, we hit ourselves, which may or may not trigger an effect, but we need to know that that particular actor says, yeah, we were in the circle. If it's not us, then we determine from the object we hit what team they belong to, and if they are equal to our team. If they are equal to our team, we're going to call them a friend. If they're not equal to our team, we're going to call them an enemy. So when we determine teams, three things are happening. We're determining, one, if we were in the hit radius as a unique actor. We're going to determine if any of the actors were friends and add them to the friend array, or if any of the actors were enemies, we're going to add them to the enemy array. And after that, we're simply applying the gameplay effect associated with any given one. So this repeats itself, which says, if the gameplay effect to apply enemies is valid, and there are at least one enemy in the area, then go ahead and apply this effect. Otherwise, skip it. If we do have an effective gameplay class and we have at least one enemy, then apply that to all enemies. Same thing, exactly the same for friendlies. If there is a gameplay effect for friendlies and there are friendlies in the array, then go ahead and apply those effects to friendly. And then finally, if I actually hit myself and there is a gameplay effect to apply to yourself, then go ahead and apply that. After that, you basically do some debugging and exit that routine. So after we do that, we have one more print screen and we tell the UI to refresh. So this basically tells the UI, okay, I fired that ability. It did everything it needed to do. So start the cooldown cycle. And what happens on the cooldown cycle is we get the cooldown time remaining, which is based on our cooldown gameplay effect class. So one of the other classes in this folder is the cooldown gameplay effect. So if you open that asset up, you'll see that it applies a gameplay tag to the actor, which says, hey, I'm in the middle of doing this this ability, so don't do anything until I clear this tag out. And in order to determine when I should clear that tag out, right here, the gameplay effect has a duration, and that cooldown duration is 5 seconds. And there's a lot of different things you can do, but basically what this says is for 5 seconds, I want the owner to have this tag, which will block it from applying this effect or executing this gameplay ability again until this expires. And so when we call get cooldown time remaining, largely 5 seconds will come back. It might be 4.8 or 4.7, but largely 5 seconds will come back. We'll pass that into the broadcast message with the amount of time that we expect the cooldown to take, which that message is not received here. Hold on. Oh, yes, correct. Blah. So class defaults. 1 second. Why am I struggling? The cooldown This particular cooldown should have sorry. This particular action touch button is listening for the particular cooldown that the meteor is sending. So the meteor says my particular cooldown is ability meteor cooldown duration, and the meteor cooldown says I am listening for the ability meteor cooldown duration. So because those two tags are the same, when the ability broadcasts how many seconds are left on the gameplay ability, the cooldown basically paces the reset of that visual to match that. It's important to know that the visual has absolutely nothing to do with the actual cooldown duration, but is simply an approximation of what the cooldown duration is expected to be. It's sort of a fake, right? It says, as you watch this thing tick down, that's your visual cue to say it's okay to refire the event. So that's kind of how the meteor works. We have a target base class which performs most of the logic. It allows for a variety of exit functions where you can do activities on a child. And then there's a variety of parameters that you can set, which is like what the montage is to play, what gameplay effect it is to apply, what cooldown widget should be associated, and what tag should be associated. So hopefully this video comes out a little clearer than the last one. I will find a way to remove the old one, replace it with this one, and hopefully that helps everyone. Thanks for watching.